reason we set up Quill was I'd come out of e-commerce, and so my background isn't actually in content. I've been on the client side of this, and one of the biggest problems that we had was how do you produce content in a scalable way for the digital environment? We've heard a couple of those two words pretty frequently in the last few hours, content and scale. And it's easy to say them, but what does that actually mean in practice when you've got to produce all this stuff? Who the hell really can produce content at the scale that we're talking about here today? So we specialize in the production of what we call primary content. I'm going to talk about what that means at scale and at speed, enabling businesses to use content to drive their growth. And that growth could be revenue, it could be average order value, it could be search rankings. What's unique about Quill, and the reason we configured the business precisely as we have, is because we wanted to be able to produce content at a scale that had never been done before. Content in any format, words, images, graphics, and video, on pretty much any topic you can think about, and in any language. Today we're probably up around the 25 to 27 languages level using native speakers. There's been some references to some of the words on here. When I ask 10 people what they mean by content, I invariably get 10 different answers. So we've sought to provide a bit of definition to how we see the content space. So coming out of e-commerce, you know, like some of you here, been living and breathing this sort of the purchase funnel on a daily basis. So awareness up here, consideration here, conversion down here, and this is the point of transaction. What I'm trying to show here is how content maps against that cycle and against that funnel. Using the Google terminology, we put the hero content up here. So this is the ads, this is what many of you will be trying to win awards for, etc. Secondary content I'll skip over. Primary content is the bread and butter for every single e-commerce business, and that's my heritage. This area here is the product descriptions, the category descriptions, the how-to guides, the destination guides, the reviews. This is where the volume is. And actually, to make this useful, we need to separate how we think about these different ends of the content spectrum because they need to be treated and measured in very different ways. So up here, at the hero end, we're talking about content that is very campaign-based. Its metrics are around creativity, inspiration, persuasion, shareability. Down here, the metrics are different. They're about accuracy. You're trying to elevate a brand up here. Down here, you're trying to be brand compliant. It's also about operational efficiency. The cost of production in this realm is absolutely critical. And one of the reasons we set up Quill is because the content industry 4 or 5 years ago, and in our mind, is still largely configured around this. But the bulk of content that e-commerce businesses and anyone trying to sell products and services online is actually largely down here. And this is not sexy stuff. This is operational stuff. This is evergreen content. It's one of the key drivers of search rankings, more so than much of the content, arguably, that sits up here. This is our definition of what we mean by primary content. The core online information that's driving conversion, but also average order value, search rankings, but specifically conversion, helping consumers to make informed decisions. Give you some examples of the sort of content I'm talking about. And this is the content that consumers are experiencing at the penultimate stage before they put in their credit card, before they make the transaction. So for a retail business, many of our clients are in retail. It's the product descriptions and the category descriptions for a hotel business. I say it could be the destination guide or the hotel reviews. Financial services, it could be how-to information around insurance products. This is not content that's going to necessarily win awards, but it is absolutely critical. It's arguably the content that's also the most measurable. We've recently been lucky enough to have Gwyn Jones, for those of you who know him, was up until a few months ago was the CEO of BBH. And when I first heard that Gwyn was interested in having a conversation, because he was very excited around what Quill is building, one of his first questions to me was, Ed, tell me about the content that you're most proud of. He said, no, that's the wrong question, isn't it? Because he'd heard a little bit about what we were doing. And I said it is, because actually, if I tell you about the content I'm most proud of, it's for a global fashion brand where the content has been produced in 10 months across 10 million words in 20 languages. Now, I'm not expecting to win an award at Cannes for that, but the scale of what we've done for that particular brand, which is probably the largest fashion content production project in Europe, that's what I'm most proud of. It's a very different way of thinking about content and what needs to be done in the content space. But many of the issues that consumers, that we've spoken about earlier today, are still relevant to this. Consumers are always on. The content at the primary content end has to be accurate and has to be compelling, has to help them make an informed decision. And similarly, brands, to the publisher point, and part of the reason we set up Quill was because we could see that many businesses, if not every business online, to some extent is now having to become a publisher. And having to become publishers for consumers who are always on and interacting with them across more touch points than they have ever had before. I hear some unbelievable numbers in terms of the amount of content that brands are now being expected to produce across more channels, more devices, in more languages, in more markets. It's absolutely mind-blowing. So I think we all get that. And the question is not why, because we all understand the importance of content, and it's not even what content. The question is how. And it's not a sexy answer. The answer is an operational one. How do you do this at scale? It's an operational problem, and it is not possible to do this with spreadsheets and Word documents. I can tell you because we have tried, and it doesn't work. So we specialize in producing, primary content at scale. What we're doing is pretty disruptive. We launched the business because we didn't see anyone else in the market delivering a solution that particularly e-commerce companies need. The way we're configured very quickly in order to deliver this, we have a proprietary software platform. A third of the business are developers that sits at the heart of the business. All of our creators are working on that platform. The creators form part of a screened network. We test them as they come into the network. They could be sat in Barcelona, Bilbao, New York. Specialists in particular topics. That gives us the range of languages and the range of topics that we need to be able to produce content against for our clients. But we do all the content quality control in-house through a combination of software and editors. We know that we stand and fall by the last piece of content that goes out from the business. We're not a marketplace. We're not a crowdsourced business. We don't think those sorts of models deliver consistency of quality and accuracy that the brands that we work with need. So we own that in-house, but this combination is what gives us an unparalleled level of scale. When we launched in 2011, echoes of when we launched Figleys, you're never going to sell clothing on the internet. That's proved to be nonsense. Clothing is now one of the 5 fastest growing categories in e-commerce. When we started this business in 2011, we were told it would be impossible to produce quality bespoke content at scale on the internet. To date, we've produced north of 10 million words of content. We'll do probably close to that this year. For over 100 businesses, including many of the agencies, some of whom in this room. We've got some great clients on there, ranging from sort of Google video content right the way through to thousands of product descriptions for a unicorn business like Farfetch in 10 to 15 languages. So we're doing something groundbreaking. We feel like we're just starting out and some ways to go, but we're very happy with where we've got to in the last 4 years.